Clayton Bailey here. We're doing Manufacturer Monday. So what's that? Some people are gonna ask. So as home inspectors, we are held by today's current building codes and standards. However, one thing supersedes building code, and that is the manufacturer's instructions of a product. So if the manufacturer says this needs to be installed a certain way, then that's the way it needs to be installed, and that overrides or supersedes any building code. Before I just jump in, Clayton Bailey, if you don't know me, Green Scene Home Inspections, third generation home inspector. Been at it for almost 17 years. We've done over 20,000 houses, so we've seen a thing or two. We're primarily here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I wanted to I do want to talk about manufactured products. So this is our first go at it, and so it's December. We decided to pick GFCIs just because so many people are plugging into their Christmas lights or their inflatables, and are they protected? Is there protection? So before I just jump in and kind of talk about all of these, so ground fault circuit interrupter, what is it? Why do we have it? What's going on with that, right? So it first was patented in 1965. It was first invented in 1961. And in 1972, it became adopted by the National Electric Code. So that was the very first code. In 1972, all bathrooms had to have outlets that were GFCI protected. Okay, so what I did is I went out and went to Lowe's, went to Home Depot, and purchased a couple different outlets. I've got the manufacturer's instructions for Eaton pulled up here online. I'll get out the one here for Leviton in just a second. They're pretty much the same, but there's some interesting things that you'll see here. And I'm gonna do something just crazy, and I'm going to fill the bathtub. We're gonna drop something in the bathtub. It's probably gonna be my hair dryer, because my hair. No, it's probably gonna be my daughter's hair dryer, because she always breaks them anyway, and she goes through them, and so we're just gonna get her another hair dryer. But I'm gonna hook up some sort of measuring devices, to see, does it trip the outlet? So I wanna be there, we're gonna experiment. So here we go, stay tuned. On GFCI outlets, by today's building code, it's 2024, so the 2023 NEC code has kind of just become adopted, right? So now we are in 2023 code, and the newest code that we're in right now says that all kitchen outlets have to be GFCI, not countertop. So all kitchen outlets have to be GFCI protected. All 50 amp or less appliances or anything have to be GFCI protected. So that's the dryer, that's your outside HVAC, that is anything that's hooked up on the exterior. So all basements, all exterior, all that kind of fun stuff has to be ground fault circuit interrupter protected. So as we're talking about this, I like to talk about, what's the difference between outlets? So I've got 3 of them here. I'm going to hold them up hopefully all at the same time so that you can see them. There's 2 15 amps and a 20 amp, okay? And there's a little bit of differences here between the two. So first off, I'm just going to hold up this 20 amp. That is a tamper resistant outlet, and that's another code that was just adopted. So any outlet that is 5 feet 6 or below has to be tamper resistant. And so that keeps kids from having to, plug something in the outlet and bad things happen, right? So the difference between the 20 and the 15, if you look at them, you see the little slot that's on there, right, versus a 15. So that visually lets you know that that's a 20 amp outlet. So there might be things that use more power. There might be things that the builder wants to plug in a smaller air conditioner or some sort of appliance or something like that. So the main thing you got to worry about is if you have the 20 amp, you've got to have a 12 AWG American wire gauge wire. And if you have the 15 amp, right, you've got to have the 14 gauge American wire gauge wire. So I'm going to be doing another little spot called Tool Time Tuesday, and we're going to talk about GFCI testers. And stay tuned for that one, because I've got a bunch of different manufacturers and how some false readings can come up if the inspector or the person that's taking the readings don't know what they're doing. Okay, so interesting thing about GFCI, when you're going to the Eaton website, so they kind of say it right here in Leviton. I'll just go ahead and open this dude up. Let's see, I'll open up the very interesting differences between the two. And I've got another camera view or another camera angle. So Leviton, one thing I thought was cool is Eaton has a QR code, and boom, you can pull it up on the screen, and we'll flash it up on the screen so that you can see it a little bit better, these instructions. I've just got them pulled up over here. So Eaton's cool because they don't have the paper. Leviton, you know, they also have it, right? There's a video that you can watch. There's two pieces of paper. One's in Spanish, one's in English, which is nice because if you're working out new construction site, there might not be Wi-Fi, right? There might not be anything available there. So we open this one up, and I'm gonna see if you can see the difference. Pretty much the same exact thing as the Eaton, right? Except, I'm gonna put a better picture of this so that you can see it. But the Eaton, theirs is installed with the ground part up, right? Where the Leviton, they want to see theirs with the ground part down. So, which way is correct, right? It doesn't actually say in the instructions, but there's a picture for those of you that build things by pictures. You know what I'm talking about. But then if you look at the wiring diagram, pretty much it looks like they have not stolen each other's diagram, because they are a little bit different drawings, but their outlets over here on the Leviton are upside down, but over here where they're explaining their outlet, it is ground side down, right? How interesting is that? So ground fault circuit interrupter, different from conventional receptacles. In the event of a ground fault, a GFCI will trip and stop the flow of electricity to prevent serious injury. We're gonna cut to that video of watching me. Maybe I might dip my finger in the water as I drop that in the water, so check it out. Scary. Definition of ground fault. Instead of following its normal safe path of electricity, passes through a person's body to reach the ground. For example, a defective appliance can cause a ground fault. A GFCI receptacle does not protect against circuit overloads, short circuits, or shocks. So you can still get shock-decuted. I made up that word, by the way, shock-decuted. My other favorite word is gription. Those are the two words since childhood I've always used. So, and there's a difference between being shocked and electrocuted, right? One is death, one is ouch, that hurt. So it's not good. For bare wires while standing on non-conductive surface such as wood floor. So it's going to protect you from that. Note, GFCIs contain a lockout feature that will prevent the reset if there is no power being supplied to the GFCI. It's important. The GFCI is miswired due to reverse line load connections. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. The GFCI cannot pass the internal test, indicating that there may not be provided protection in the event of a ground fault event, right? So next step, they're just kind of talking about the diagrams for those of you that don't know. So on an outlet, your skinny side or the short side is the hot wire. So that's the one that will hurt, right? Usually wired to a black wire. The tall side is your neutral, right? It's the white wire that's there. And then your bottom is your ground. Now, on a ground fault, what they want to see is a line side and a load side. Okay, we're going to talk more about that in just a second. But I love how Leviton in their instructions says, should you install it? right? Installing a GFCI receptacle can be more complicated than installing a conventional receptacle. That probably has to do with what I'm about to say next, right? Make sure that you understand basic wiring principles and techniques, can interpret wiring diagrams, have a circuit wiring experience, are prepared to take a few minutes to test your work. Make sure that you have wired the GFCI receptacle correctly. So there's going to be different testers that you can use. I'm just gonna pull one of these up really fast. This is sort of the El Cheapo kind. I call it El Cheapo, but it's just the simplest kind that you can have. For some of you out there, you might want to look at the wiring book from your Lowe's or Home Depot that just talks about basic wiring if you think that you're gonna take something like this on. However, you should always consult a licensed, certified, qualified professional master electrician if you're gonna try to do any of this yourself. Right? This is very dangerous. You want to make sure that you are safe. Let's go talk about the line side versus the load side and what that means. Basically, the line side is if your power box is over here and my outlets are over here and I've got more outlets down the line. So they want the wire coming in closest to the breaker, right, to go to the top, and that's the line side, and it says it on the back side. So that should be the line side, and then when they come out and go daisy chain to each additional breaker, that's the load side, right? So that those outlets don't have to be the GFCIs with the buttons, they can just be a regular outlet, but this would be the main reset that's closest to the line, right? So if you're in a kitchen and you see an outlet that doesn't have the little buttons, doesn't mean that it's not GFCI protected, it just means that it's going back to the line side where it needs to be, okay? So line cables delivers power from the service panel breaker or a fuse box to trip the GFCI. There is only one cable entering the electrical box. It is the line cable. This cable should be connected to the GFCI line terminals only. So both of these manufacturers have devices built into it. If it's not wired correctly, it won't work, which is cool. I think that's neat that they're doing that. The load cable, right, delivers power from the GFCI to another receptacle in the circuit. This should be connected to the GFCI's load terminals only if the load terminals are under a yellow sticker. Do not remove the sticker at this time. So that is this little yellow sticker that they're talking about, right? So attention, the load terminals under this label are for feeding additional receptacles. Miswiring can leave the outlet without ground fault circuit protection. Read the instructions prior to wiring. So right there, they're like, don't wire into here. And we're going to talk about some of the examples of how you would wire this if you don't have that versus when you do. We're also going to talk about like a 2-wire system and can you use a GFCI on a 2-wire system, which is a kind of an old style wiring like in the 50s before they had grounds, right? It can be done, but we'll talk about that more here in just a second. So turn the power off. How would I know if I've turned the power off? So I would get my handy dandy tester, plug into the outlet, right? And then I'm gonna go to my panel box, flip it until these lights go out. So then I know, okay, it's off, it's out, it's safe. Okay, so they're telling you in the instructions, plug in an electrical device such as a lamp or a radio into the receptacle which you are working, turn the lamp on or radio on, then go to the service panel, find the breaker or fuse that protects the receptacle. Place the breaker in the off position, completely removing the fuse. The lamp or the radio must turn off. So you can do this or you can do the lamp. You don't have to have the tester, right? Next, plug in, turn on the lamp radio at the receptacle, the outlet, to make sure the power is off. Again, if you're using this, you wouldn't see these lights light up, okay? If the power is not off, stop work and call an electrician to complete installation. I wonder why they say that. It's because your breakers are not wired properly. Okay, so now we got to find and put a sniffer out on all your circuits to find out which breaker services that outlet. We got to make sure that it's the right one. Okay. Identify cables, wires. Important. Do not install GFCI receptacles in a electrical box containing more than 4 wires, including ground wires, or cables with more than 2 wires, not including the ground wire. Contact a qualified electrician if either A or B are true. Okay. If you see one cable with 2 to 3 wires, it is the line cable. This receptacle is probably in the C position of the diagram. We'll get to that in just a second. Remove the receptacle and then go to step 7A. If you have 2 cables, so you've got 2 Romex wires coming in, you've got 4 to 6 wires in there, the receptacle is probably going to be a position B, A, or B. The diagram on the right, follow the steps A, E to produce the right deal. So right there they're saying they're automatically putting in the line and the load is all coming into one junction box. Okay. Procedure: box with 2 different cables, 4 to 6 wires. Detach one of the cables, white wire and hot wire, from the receptacle and cap each one separately with a wire connector. Make sure that they are safe from the cable. Reinstall the receptacle in the electrical box. Attach faceplate, then turn on the power in the service panel. Determine if the power is flowing to the receptacle. If so, the capped wire are load wires. If not, the capped wires are line wires. So that's important, because if you have it wrong, no worky. Won't work, right? So that's an important step to go. Let's go to 7B, and then I'm going to take a break for just a second. So then I'm going to flash up a picture of the next little diagram so that you can see how they're daisy chaining these together. So look at this.
And now, a short commercial break.
Hi, Alex Ferrell, Green Scene Home Inspections. Today we are in a 1992 house and we are discussing GFCI protection. So typical to a house of this age, the GFCI protection is most commonly going to be located in the garage. Okay, so what we do during our inspections, now we want to make sure that the house is vacant, because sometimes what happens is if we have, let's say, a refrigerator in the garage, maybe it has some meat that was gathered during a hunt, or even worse, possibly medication, insulin, something like that. We want to avoid tripping these. But being that we're in a vacant house today, we do go around and check these, make sure that they trip off. Now, the manufacturer way of testing it, you can do at home, which is recommended that you do it every month. Not a lot of people do it, but it's that little test button, and you just make sure that that tests off and you can reset it. Eventually these do expire. I have done inspections before where I come in and I hit that button and that little red button flies across the room and we find ourselves replacing one for a not so happy seller. But today we are functioning, but they do require replacement after some time. So to kind of cover on that, based on the age of the house, we have this GFCI receptacle, which protects all the exterior receptacles. So when you're putting out Christmas lights, you're exposing any of those plugs, any of those wires to weather. If those wires are exposed to any moisture, any water, it's going to cause the system to trip off. So in some situations, you may have a house that has their network hooked up to their garage receptacles. That's going to knock out their internet. It's going to knock out house receptacles in the bathrooms, let's say laundry area. So just something we like to kind of keep people, informed about on the age of the house. That this is going to be your area, that if you start to lose power in certain areas of the house, be it kitchen, bathroom, before you call the electrician, try and hit that reset button and see if you can bring it back to life.
We're back. Okay, so here we are back. Now I'm going to keep moving on. So there's 2 diagrams here. I went ahead and got out some of my different testing tools. We're going to talk more about these on Tool Time Tuesday. But I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So, and it's the same. It's funny how they are very similar here. I'll kind of scroll down if you can see this in the background. So even Leviton and Eaton pretty much have the same pattern or flow to their instructions, right? I wonder if attorneys got involved in that, right? So it's like they're very similar, but their drawings are a little bit different, right? So here we go. So grounding connecting box to the terminal, you can see that diagram. I'm going to flash to this picture. Mostly you can go ahead and we're going to look at the picture here as I'm talking. So you see where the white wire, where the black wire goes in from the line cable from the top, the yellow sticker remains in place. Again, this is diagram A that's there. You need to still keep the load ones covered with the yellow sticker. Now, this is why we do this. See, this next part, like, I wouldn't have known had I read these instructions. Did you know that when you are wiring your connections that you've got to remove 3/4 of the inch of insulation, right? Loop it clockwise 2/3 of the way around the screw, tighten the screw over the loops 14 to 18 inches of foot-pounds of torque, right? So they want to see at least 14 to 18 inch-pounds. So that can vary, right? So here's what happens if you don't do this correctly. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera so you can see it. So we had something that was miswired and it completely melted this outlet, right? I don't know what was plugged into this thing. I found this on a flip house where they just threw it in the crawl space and they replaced all the wires. It was copper wire, it wasn't aluminum, for those of you that are wondering or asking out there. So something was not wired correctly, and right here in the manufacturer's instructions it wants to see it. So if you're doing a side wire connection, which is this one only has, yeah. So the difference between the two, the side wire connection is here. They want to see 3/4 of the sheathing removed. If you're doing a back connection where you're pushing it in through these holes right here, you need to only remove 5/8 inch of sheathing, right? The back wires insert bare wire fully into the terminal clamp conductor only. Tighten screws 14 to 18 pounds. Torque values can vary. Be found at levitontorquevalue.com. Connect the line cables to where the wires to the terminals, line terminals. The white wire connects to the white terminal, silver. The black wire connects to the hot terminal, brass or black. So let's open this up. So where's my outlet? So can you see you've got a silver side and you've got a brass side. So that's the other color differentiator they want you to see. So wires for the white wire are silver over here, and it's also labeled on the back. And then your hot wire, right, is going to be on the brass side. So good to know. For a box with no grounding terminal, diagram not shown, connect the lines cable bare wire or green wire directly to the grounding terminal on the GFCI receptacle. For a box with a grounding terminal diagram shown above, connect a 6-inch bare wire to or green to, with the 12 or 14 American gauge wire to the grounding terminal and the GFCI. Also connect a similar wire to the grounding terminal on the box. Connect the ends of these wires to the line cables bare wire copper green using a wire connector. If these wires are already in place, check the connections. You want to make sure they're tight so that this doesn't happen, right? Complete the installation, fold the wires into the box, keeping the ground wire away from the white wire or hot terminals. Screw the receptacles to the box, attach the faceplate, boom, boom, right? So that was just if you've got one wire coming in the top and you're wiring it to silver and brass, right? Your hot and your neutral. So black, hot gets brass, white, neutral gets silver. Okay, that's coming in. Now you have a properly wired GFCI outlet. However, if you've got load sides, okay, it's the same kind of thing. So instructions are very similar. You're still gonna remove the same amount of sheathing for both, so nothing changes there. Connect the line cables to the line terminals, silver and black, as shown. Connect the load cable wires to the load terminals. Remove the yellow sticker, right? I feel like it's like don't cut the tag off the pillowcase or the bedding, or the FBI is gonna come looking for you. So don't take this off until unless you're doing load side. So remove the yellow sticker. The white wire connects the white terminal silver. The black one goes to the black brass, connecting the ground wires only if there is a ground wire. Okay, connect a 6-inch bare copper or green 12 to 14 American gauge wire to the grounding terminal on the GFCI. If the box has a grounding terminal, also connect a similar wire to the ground terminal of the box. Connect the ends of these wires to the line. Load cables bare or copper green wire using a wire connector. If these wires already in place, check the connections. So this doesn't happen, right? You want to make sure it's tight, 14 to 18 inch-pounds. Test your work. If you miswire to GFCI, it may not prevent personal injury or death due to ground fault circuit electric shock. Okay, so I'm going to kind of take a little break from this part, and we're going to talk about statistics. So I looked it up. I went online. I'm just like, okay, well, how many people have died from GFCI? So from 1979 to 1985, there were around 95 deaths. Okay, so it's like, okay, well, how many people die annually? And so this is where it was a little bit more dark. So if I scroll down, on average 290 people a year are killed from electrocution in the shower or tub. Wow, 295 people were killed. However, this is an unfortunate statistic, 75% of them were suicides. So, people are gonna figure out a way, but if you don't make it convenient for them, then it's not gonna happen. There was another statistic that said in the world, there was close to 19,000 deaths due to shock, electrocution in bathrooms. So that's a big number. This is why we do what we do. So I'm gonna wrap this thing up. So when we're talking about GFCIs, inspectors are gonna oh, it's not GFCI protected. It is a big deal. They have caused deaths, okay? Stay tuned for what I'm gonna do in my own bathroom with my daughter's hairdryer. So we'll make a funny TikTok video out of that, I'm sure. If you don't follow us on social media, we post really funny things. So talking about testers and going to GFCI, you can get false readings if it was wired improperly. So sometimes it'll say it's open ground when it could be GFCI, but they were doing like a little bandit wire from the neutral to the ground. And then it looks like it is grounded, but then it won't test. Like you hit the test button and it won't test. Couple different kinds of testers that are out there. Some of them, you've got your Milwaukee and your Klein. We're going to do more about this on Tool Time Tuesday. For an inspector carrying them around, I'm all for, speed and, wanting to get after it. The problem with, this one versus this one versus this one are covers, to be honest with you. So the outside cover, if you're lifting it up, sometimes you have a hard time getting these in without breaking the cover. Where this one is a little bit skinnier and you can get in there. And the same thing with floor receptacles. So floor receptacles, you can't get these into a floor outlet because there's not enough room, where this one you can. I like these because they have a little voltage sniffer on the end of it, so I can touch something and see if there's electricity going to it, kind of like what this is here. So if I have this on and it's going, then I'm going to be able to see, is there voltage here in something, right? So I can sniff it out with that. Now, one of the ones that I think is really cool, but it's kind of cumbersome to carry for an inspector, is the Klein. So now we have to have AFCI in all areas of the house. So this one's AFCI and GFCI, and I'm not going to get into all the technical part of it, but this is going to be easier to plug in. Okay, so Manufacture Monday. I hope this has enlightened you. I hope you've learned a thing or two. 2-wire outlets in older houses can have a GFCI on them, but they're not as protected. So we got to be careful of that. Okay, hope to see you on your next Manufacturing Monday. Have a great day.